So the next feature that we are going to take a look at is basically private methods in an interface. Now this is something that was introduced in Java 9, and it is a very good language feature in case you want to provide, say, a default implementation in an interface which was provided in earlier versions of Java, but also modularize the code and break it into a couple of extra functions. So let's just see this with an example so that it makes more sense. So I'll come to Java 9. We have this package here. A quick note, usually having underscores in package names is supported by Java, but I wouldn't recommend this in a production project. You should try to have your name without spaces and adhere to Java convention, but this is just to make it more easier to read and have numbers so that a sequence is maintained. So let's take a look at our interface. So here I just have a simple example interface, calling it with a very simple name, and I have two private methods, right? Now this is something that Java 9 introduced. If you can see, I have a private static string method called as static private, which essentially returns me a string, and I have another method which is non-static, which should belong to an instance. And what you can see is I have a default method called as check. Now default methods in Java is a way for you to provide a default implementation within interface. This can be useful, say, if you have some sort of testing class where you have a base interface and a certain implementation that might make sense for many of the classes that basically implement that interface, then you can use a default method to provide that implementation. Of course, a class that implements that interface can later on choose to override that, so that flexibility is still there. But with private methods in interface, we can also modularize the code within these default methods. So here you can see I call the static private method, get a string, and I'm just logging it with a simple sort of string interpolation. I prefer this sort of syntax wherein you give these string placeholders and I use formatted instead of string.format. It also adds to the readability when I compare it with, say, concatenation and stuff like that. And you can see that I am initializing this interface, calling it PVT, and then I'm basically initializing an anonymous class. So this is how you can essentially create an instance of your interface, and with that instance I'm calling instance.private, right? So I'm also able to call private methods that are non-static within an interface and printing it. So this is good, but how do we make use of it, right? So I have a implementation class, and the implementation class is very simple. I have a class called as with the same name followed by impl. It's a convention that people follow. You can choose to follow a different convention as well. It implements my interface, and inside what you see is I've created an object of this class. I'm not overriding anything. I'm just going to make use of the default implementation that is provided. So with the instance of this particular class, I'm calling the check method, right? So let's just run this, and you can see our program ran fine. You can notice a couple of log entries at the bottom, and you can see it prints the two loggers that we had in our private methods. And that's private methods in interface in a nutshell. Use it whenever you want to provide default implementations in your interface, but also modularize the code so that you don't have a long method, which is a code smell in itself. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.